So let's move on. I think probably a good place to start is maybe Burnley. Obviously, top when we're discussing the three promoted sides. Interesting last time out, Vincent Company taking them up. What a team they were in the championship. Extremely different to Parker's setup. I think that the once again that general consensus is that Company side were a little bit more free flowing when it comes to attack. Maybe not as focused on defensive astuteness, albeit them having a very good defensive record in the championship when they went up. But Parker was almost built on that defensive rear guard. Do you see them potentially having a little bit more of a chance this time round, Ben, with that maybe a little bit more of a pragmatic setup?
Well, this is where we go into simple answers to complicated problems because one of the things that's going to really irritate fans of Leeds, Burnley, and Sunderland all season is saying, you know, and mainstream big pundits saying, oh, if these sides just concentrated on defence, then everything would be fine and they would magically have 50 points or something and be halfway up the table. And it's so frustrating because it's like, do you think these sides are not trying to be good defensively? Do you think they're not working every week on stopping the opposition and defensive stuff? And Burnley's going to be a great way of debunking all these idiotic comments because they're literally the greatest defensive side in terms of the numbers that the Championship's ever seen. I think there's nuance to that, Connor, as well, because if you watch them, they didn't just sit behind the ball with a low block every game. In the end, the defensive thing, it kind of became a thing, didn't it? And then they played into it and almost became a bit more defensive during the season. But they were trying to control game with possession and territory, as Parker would repeatedly say. So here you go. Here's your example of a team that were brilliant defensive going up. But, and we have this a lot, one of the centre halves is not going to be there. So straight away, we're seeing James Trafford, who was incredible in goal, being linked away, and CJ Egan-Riley has gone. I know Estev's brilliant. So we say this every season, Connor, that, and this is what fans of Premier League teams don't understand, that even to it's like keeping weight off when you get to middle age, right? Even to just maintain, you have to work so much harder. And for Burnley to even be on a level, we know straight away are going to have to probably drop a load of money on a new centre back because one of that key, partnership is already gone.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And maybe when they came up to the Premier League, they were thinking about maybe improving that counter-attacking threat. We know from sort of January onwards, when Marcus Edwards came in, you saw definitely a difference and a little bit more of a free-flowing Burnley. I felt Edwards pushed them higher up the pitch. He then, in turn, pushed the opposition
Was he on
fullbacks
loan,
back.
Connor?
Yeah, he was, and now he's obviously he's
So
signed,
there you
which is a
go.
big signing. Yeah, big
But
signing.
even to stand still, you got
Yeah.
to drop a load of money, yeah?
Yeah, 100%. So they were maybe thinking to themselves, they're going to have to add a new striker, which obviously we'll get onto. But maybe they didn't think to themselves that they had to break up Roberts, CJ Egan Riley, Esteve, and Bashir Humphreys. Maybe they didn't feel they had to break that up. And now they've got to, because you got to hit the ground running, haven't you, with these new signings? It's not just about bringing these players in, it's can they hit the ground running? Can they hit the ground running in the Premier League?
Oh, it's so hard. But one way, and we talk about the general survival kit, one way you can do it is if your pattern of play is established and you don't sign 100 new players. You talked about Ipswich. They had a brilliant pattern of play, but they had a League One squad.
Mm.
So you essentially do break up your pattern of play when you bring in a load of signings. But look, playing next to Esteve is going to be good. But again, Connor, how much harder is it defending against Saka and Haaland and, insert elite striker forward than it is with respect going to Preston and, Oxford?
Yeah, I guess Burnley's what I quite like about them is without any disrespect, I think this is a massive advantage and will work for them in the Premier League. I think it's them not overplaying in phase, and I think Parker's drilled that into them, and I think that
Good
will
point.
simultaneously transition into the Premier League. I think the big thing in the Premier League is don't overplay, know when to go along. And I think that's a big thing with Burnley as well. The home record was impeccable. I think in the Premier League, if you manage to win 6 or 7 home games, that sounds gargantuan, but it's what you have to do. It is the blueprint, isn't it, Ben?
100%. And I know you're a Leeds fan, so I'm loath to mention Big Sam, but he used to be there every year with his data, didn't he? Oh,
Mm.
if you concede what is it, 11 wins. No one goes down with 11 wins, or 35 points. You stay up 99% of the time or something. So there is that data, and yeah, you're totally right. It's hard to go to these elite clubs, and even the 17, mate. It's hard to go to Bournemouth and Fulham and whoever now in the middle of the table and go and get a win. So you're totally right. If you need 11 wins, it stands to reason, exactly like you're saying, that 3, 4 away from home leaves 7 at home.
It really does. And interesting. I wanted to throw a couple of names at you, Ben, when it comes to maybe transfers and what Burnley could do. There's a lot of rumours around Mengi at the minute, obviously at Luton, being almost a little bit of a direct replacement for CJ Egan-Riley. There's experience there in the Premier League, Championship. I believe he was a former Man United product as well.
Mm.
He's got good aerial ability, a bit of composure on the ball, and I think in a poor Luton side over the past 2 years, he sort of looked, a little bit of a standout, really. And he mirrors a lot of what Egan Riley has, in my opinion. So that could be an addition. And maybe could you see as well, if big if for Burnley fans, if James Trafford was to move on, which is the
Ooh.
rumor obviously to Newcastle, could you maybe see them going for Michael Cooper?
Yes, that'd be terrible news if Trafford went, though, because
Yeah, it would.
he was like, you just don't want to be going up. At minimum, keep your best players, or
Yeah.
at least don't lose all of them. But oh, Connor, mate, if we start the season, and the best thing about Burnley, I know defending is a team pursuit, but you're going to take out the goalkeeper and one of the
Mm.
centre backs. I'm like, no, this is bad news. And yeah, you mentioned Mengi. People will balk at it, but my argument with promoted teams is, okay, name a name. Who can you get? In the current situation, but he's got to come into something solid, i.e., not an entirely new centre half and goalkeeper combination.
What do you make of Parker in terms of a Premier League adaptation, Ben? Do you think he's learned? Do you think he'll be able to? Look, it's a massive question, obviously, because there's so many components here. The context has to be applied. There's a transfer window to go. What's going to happen? You just mentioned Trafford. I'm talking about CJ Egan Riley as well. There's so much, but do you think he'll have learned from his previous stint in the Premier League? And do you think from your perspective he's capable enough to manage Burnley in the Premier League?
I'm just waiting for the comments, because it's impossible to have. I don't know if
Yeah.
you found it impossible to have a sensible conversation about Scott Parker, because there's definitely Parker derangement syndrome, isn't it? And yeah, I get it. I get it. And I've spent a lot of time talking to Fulham fans and talking to Bournemouth fans who literally say that, oh no, he was rubbish. We got promoted in spite of him. And you're kind of like, really? That seems a little bit extreme. What happens, Connor, if he turns out to be the biggest football genius in the world, and the mainstream media pundits, who I called idiots earlier, were actually right, and you have to be really defensively sound, and he's been plotting this since the middle of last season, prepping a really good defensive team? Look, I think he's better than people say. I think
Mm.
it's a really hard gig. It's going to be so hard for him to keep him up, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can he do it? We will find out.